And we're back for another casual conversation with the classic here, another quarantine bonus episode of me talking to people in and out of the wrestling industry. Today, I got none other than a friend of mine, someone who's very supportive of the Wrestling Classic, also very supportive of my other friends, Maestro Classic. As you can see, he's repping them right now. Shout out to Maestro. But it's my boy, Rio. How's it going? How are you doing? How are you surviving quarantine?
Man, brother, I'm trying to figure out what dimension we're living in right now.
It's weird, right?
The times are surreal. Dude, like everything, like the world was spinning, everything was going, everything was smooth, and then it's just like somebody on the train just pulled that emergency brake, and we all just came to a halt, and we're just stuck on the tracks, just trying to figure out when we're gonna start moving.
I was literally just joking around with my one of my really good friends, Sidra. I was talking to her right now. We were just hanging out, and I'm like, it's funny because the first time I went to California in 2018, I came home, but the plan was to go back because I stayed there for 6 months, but I started working with my brother. And then just this past February, like 2020, I just went back to California.
Yeah.
And the plan was to come home, go to Tampa for WrestleMania, come back home, and then go back to California. And I'm like, but this time there's a global pandemic. I'm like, I don't know if there's something against me, but every time I'm supposed to go back.
Life's telling me not right now. Maybe. Yeah. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
It's the Twilight Zone.
It really is. And it's funny because like I am like I would consider myself, I wasn't when I was younger, but as I get a little bit older, I'm not old at all, but as I get older, I've become more of a homebody. So like I'm like, oh, I stay home all the time anyways. I don't even like going out. But then now I'm home so much and I'm like, okay. The fact that I can't go anywhere now is starting to bother me because, like, I guess I did enjoy the small things. Like, if I wanted to go to a coffee shop and work, or if I wanted to go to the grocery store, if I wanted to go to the gym or the pool, like, it's those small things. And I'm like, oh, I really do strive off of social interaction because even if I don't hang out with my friends, like, I go out and I talk to people and there's that little bit of social interaction. I feel like that's fully gone and I'm losing my mind a little bit.
The highlight of my day now is just knowing when the recycling trucks are coming, when the mailman stops by, and it's like, oh man, there's people. Okay, there's people. All right.
No, I feel that, dude. That's how when I order food and it's coming to dropped off at my front door, I'm still like at the door looking at them, like, when are they gonna come here, people?
I made the mistake. It's like I finally ordered off of like Uber Eats type of thing. And
yeah.
Man, like what is it? But like they drop it off and like just really gung ho about like going outside to go meet this guy, and it's like very like no, stay away from me type of thing. And it's like, wow, this guy's
it's weird because you see people that are super cautious and you can tell like they give you the eye if you walk too close to them, or they're just kind of like but then you also get the people that don't care. So it's weird because I get offended a little bit by the people that are super cautious, like chill man, I'm not a giant germ. But then at the same time I get offended, I get annoyed at the people that don't care. I'm like what? Not only they come near me, but it's like, why are you guys all having a picnic at the beach? Like, go home.
Yeah, at least we're like the people. Man, what gets me is like I've been seeing lately, like especially we have this grocery store like out here in Florida called Publix. Yeah. But even like those are closed down. We'll muster up it's like going to war when you have to like walk into a Walmart or something, especially during these times. And it's like, man, it just boggles my mind when you see these people whose like faces aren't covered or anything like this, and it's like. Am I taking this thing too seriously, or am I not taking it seriously enough? Like what's going on here with the thing? Like I'm trying to figure out where to stand on.
I feel the same way because I bounce back and forth as time while I'm taking it really seriously. Then I'm like, right, I never thought that it calmed down, but I'm like, here, like I think we can just take it a little bit easy now. But I don't know about where you're at, but where we're at, like they're like, oh, like they said, oh, it's kind of flat on the curve. We're not getting those many new cases, and I didn't go crazy, but I obviously like I do my daily drive. Because it's just me in my car, and I just need to get out of the house for like a cruise past. I live near a beach, so I get to like cruise past the beach in my car window. Nice. You know what I mean? So like, but the thing is when I cruise past
that to enjoy.
Yeah. So the thing is when I cruise past the beach though, and it was like a Saturday, I see all these people kite surfing and hanging out, and the tide was low, so they're all like holding hands and walking down the tide, or they got the chair. I'm like, yo, I get it. They said that we're not getting those many cases. It's cool. It doesn't mean go back outside and live your life normally. Literally right after
stuff is still weird.
Yeah, so that same Saturday where I saw that stuff, 90 new cases were released. Then a couple of days after, another 50. And then I was like, see?
Off from flying kites. You see what happened?
Yeah, like come on, guys. But let's talk about what people probably want to hear about. As an independent wrestler, Let's talk about you first. Where are you from? Where are you from in the United States? Where do you mainly wrestle?
I am originally from Bridgeport, Connecticut. So shout out to the 203. I'm a Northeast kid at heart, born and raised. I've been living in Florida for a little while now, and for I say a little while, but since like 2005.
Yeah.
So
Time flies by way more the older you get, right?
Gosh, 1 minute. So fast.
I tell people like we moved to the neighborhood. I'm like, oh, we didn't move here that long ago. Then I was like, oh wait, we've lived here for like it's 2020, like officially 10 years. I just
yeah. Like I think I've been out here like maybe a while.
Yeah.
it's like 15 years, man. It flew by. It really did. It flew by so fast. Like I moved out here mid junior year. Remember, like I was excited. Like I was bummed because like the wrestling season was over. Like right when I had just like moved over here, like to be able to try out for the team and everything like that time was done. So I was really like disheartened by that. I felt like the awkward kid in high school.
Did you move here for like? Did you start with amateur wrestling? Is that your background?
Yeah, I started wrestling. I was in middle school, and all the way through high school. So of course, being a longtime wrestling fan, like I when I was born and raised, like all I had was like wrestling as a kid just growing up. Like,
do you remember what your first memory might have been of wrestling? What was the first thing that got you hooked? First memory, and also the wrestler that inspired you. Those are the two questions the most.
Oh man! So first memory was my uncle knew that like the only thing that would shut me up, like my dad said, like the only thing that would shut me up was like whenever he would put in like VHS cassettes of like something that my uncle had recorded for me, and whenever Hulk Hogan promos would come on, I guess he was louder than my crying was. So I was like, man, dude, I'm trying to cry over here. Like, be quiet, but what you say kind of sounds interesting. So I was always mesmerized by Hogan, especially as a kid. Is what drew me in. Is what drew like tons of thousands of kids, man, if not millions. And just WrestleMania 9, Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas, Nevada was like that first outdoor WrestleMania. And to me, it always stuck out as like that main memory of wrestling because it looked so different from what the usual arenas were and the pageantry. Like Vince said, we're going all out on this WrestleMania. We're giving this thing like a cool vibe and a cool everything. And it was my first real memory of that. And then the wrestler that just ended up taking me by storm was Bret Hart, dude. Like, is like surely the freaking best in my eyes, is the best. And I remember WrestleMania 12 when 60-minute Iron Man match. The outcome wasn't in our favor.
No.
And Shawn got the belt that night, man. I couldn't stand Shawn Michaels.
There's a couple of things I want to pick apart there and I want to get back to your story in a second, but I always love asking questions because I think that's a basis of like what got you into wrestling and who influenced you. First things first, Hulk Hogan. I don't think like I'm younger. Right? I was born in 1991, so my Hulk Hogan that I loved the most was Hollywood Hogan because that's who I had as a little kid, and I loved that bad guy. But my brother is 10 years older than me. He was born in 1981, and he was the biggest Hulkamaniac. And I know the generations after me, like the kids that were born in the late 90s or the 2000s stuff, they have like this bad representation of Hulk Hogan because they're graced and grateful to have this very athletic base of wrestling that we have today. So they look at Hogan like he couldn't even wrestle, he couldn't do this. But I'm like, I don't think you guys understand like his influence that he had back in those days on the kids. Right. And the fact that he was larger than life, and he didn't have to be the greatest wrestler. It was his promos, it was his presence, it was the way he
about wrestling as kids.
No, he did it, and that goes to the next thing I want to pick apart. Why I find it so fascinating is because a lot of people will sit there and say WrestleMania 9 was one of the worst WrestleManias. But you're not the only person I know, only friend of mine, because I have a lot of friends who are around the same age as me, a couple years older than and they're like, oh, my best friend that I do the TWC show with every week, Devin, he always talks about how he used to watch WrestleMania 9 all the time. And it was sweet. And it's the atmosphere. And I sometimes I sometimes always bring that up. I'm like, I get they do the big stadium shows for WrestleMania, but I miss the outside events that were in smaller venues too. Like I know it didn't make any money, but I miss like the Hog Wilds and the Road Wilds. I miss the Spring Break Nitros. I miss the Bash to the Beach actually at the beach. Those things might have not been the greatest or the most profitable, but for fans, they're memorable. You'll always remember it. I can't tell you
I've always remembered it.
Yeah, like I always remembered when they're in Sturgis as a kid. like seeing people come out with a bunch of bikers there was a unique, like it left a nostalgic memory on my mind. Like I'm always like, man, yeah, maybe these matches
was what set WCW apart.
Yeah.
Like I think Bischoff was willing to go to those extents and do those crazy things and go to those extremes to like make this like, all right, WWE or WCW, excuse me, at the time, we kind of run this, and like that's like I always knew them as the WCW guys because when they did the crazy stuff, WCW guys just had a show at the beach. I'm like, man, why WWF isn't having shows at the beach? But then you got Luger, body slamming Yokozuna on the Intrepid in New York, so that to me was freaking awesome too.
And they did stuff like I found footage of like the stuff they did in the middle of Times Square, like promoting WrestleMania. Like they did stuff, but it was obviously in the early and mid 80s they did a lot of those baseball stadium shows that always had a cool vibe to them. Mostly NWA, where like Flair would drop down in a helicopter and walk. It's just like, stuff happened. And one of my fondest memories, one of my fondest memories of the Spring Break Nitros until this day was when Sting came down off the helicopter. I miss that stuff too. So I feel like the younger fans don't get to appreciate that about how like why WrestleMania 9 was such a big deal, because it was a gimmick WrestleMania, and they haven't done like a full gimmick WrestleMania since then where everyone's wearing togas, or like this year like they maybe would have done everyone wearing pirate stuff, like who knows, but like it was cool. And then the last thing,
Bobby Heenan coming out backwards on the
it's hilarious.
Amazing to me.
And then the last thing I want to pick apart from what you said was the Bret Hart thing, because he is also obviously my favorite, and I've always liked Bret more than Shawn. But it was so funny because I did always like Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is on my top 5, like right after Bret. But as a kid, it was almost like you like wrong to like Shawn Michaels kind of back then. Like most people with an older brother, he's like, oh, why do you like the guy? He's so flamboyant.
Is there something wrong with you?
Like Bret was the man's man, like Bret was the cool man's man. He was the guy.
For me, like Bret was the guy that made it super awesome to wear pink.
Yeah.
And, like if you were a man's man, you wore pink. So there was a point in my career where like I went through a few sets of gear that were like pink and black, and obviously like if anybody were to ask me like, oh, what gave you that idea? But yeah, I think same reason as you, man. Like Bret to me was that guy who he came out with like this presence. He had this presence about him, man. And he commanded seriousness. He commanded respect. He commanded, values, good morals, and everything like that. And like that Hitman character was the dude who represented, all that was good at that time. That stuff to me, especially growing up, like, holy crap, I could look up to this guy. Like
that's the
wrestling
thing.
isn't bad.
Some of my if I was gonna give my top 3, it's Savage, Taker, Bret. But the thing with Savage and Taker, Savage just blew my imagination as a kid. I had all these VHS tapes that my brother recorded of like TNTs and Saturday nights and all this stuff and wrestling challenges. And I'm like, anytime this guy's on my screen, I'm hooked. Like he's on my screen, I'm watching. His voice blew my imagination, his looks, his style, like everything about him. I'm like, there's something about this guy that makes me love wrestling. And then The Undertaker was the whole mystique. Like I just loved the whole character, the larger than life. That like as a child, like my first memories
had presence.
Yeah, and the first thing I remember watching live, like when I actually started watching Raw live, was like '96, and it was Taker and Mankind, and Taker was the good guy, purple glove Taker at that point, and I was with it, man. But Bret was the first one out of those 3 guys that I actually felt like he's real. Like Savage, over the top crazy, Taker, over the top dead guy. Bret's real, and
I can meet Bret at like the mall or something.
I can meet Bret. I could be Bret. Like you know what I mean? Like this is someone I could actually look up to. You know what I mean? Like, and he made everything look real, seem real, feel real, and he just like Savage was cool in his own way, but he was wacky, And Taker was cool in his own way, but he was a dead guy. Bret was cool because he was like the Fonzie of wrestling. He was just cool. Like you know what I mean?
Bam, you hit it. That was like oh my god, like to me out, and you say Fonzie, like my dad just this guy who grew up on like
Happy
all
Days,
those old school sitcoms. So I love it. So you saw Bret coming out with the leather jacket and everything like that. I was like, hey, this guy's the real deal. But for me, like I saw what, and you can attest to this, like at that time frame, especially when Bret was like really hot. Like that was the land of like the big guys. And when Bret would go against those bigger guys, from perspective and reality, watching Bret on TV standing next to The Undertaker, Psycho Sid, Bret looked like a little guy. I'm a little guy.
Yeah.
And to me, when I saw Bret like putting the boots to somebody, I was like, man, Bret, I'm going to be able to put the boots to somebody if need be because of you one day. You gave me that hope. But then you see Bret Hart in like real life. You're like, oh man, you're actually kind of, you're
He's a
not
big
that
guy.
small. You're
It's
actually
just
a
the
big
land of
dude.
giants. It's the land of giants.
Yes.
But
Yeah, it really was.
but no, and then like the Hitman was fitting because he targeted a body part on a big guy. Like it just Bret was the man. But anyways, back to you. So Bret was the guy. So you loved wrestling your entire life. You started amateur wrestling in high school, middle school, or it's different in the States and Canada. We don't really have middle school here. But and then did you move because you like your whole family was moving, or did you move for wrestling?
So man, I gotta just go on the record right now and saying that like a lot of people probably say, that my parents are probably the best parents in the world, and I guess depending and defining their circumstances for where they are in life, that could be true based on that moment. And I can honestly say that my parents are some of the most incredible people you'll ever meet. They had some incredible jobs working in the state of Connecticut and making really great money. And I just knew at the time, especially like I love your stuff so much because it allows me to go back and relive wrestling history and to like trigger like parts of my brain that like, oh my God, like this is why I fell in love with this stuff. And for me, like I always loved like the Florida scene and like the NWA scene, like the Mike Graham scene and like the superstar Billy Graham days of his Florida time here. And it developed this persona, especially like with TNA being here, at the time, especially like what was it? 2004, 2005, like during those heavy hot X Division days, like holy crap, man, Florida is the place to be. FCW is out there, everything is out there, and like, man, I feel like my chances of making it in wrestling, especially in pro wrestling, would be a lot greater if I lived in Florida. So I started giving my parents the Iggy, for like a couple of years and just planting the seeds. And they're like, you know what, if you feel that succeeding in Florida is what it'll take for you to really get this going, then you know what, we're going to pack up everything we know and we're going to say bye to the people that we know and love here, and we're going to move to the unknown and hope and see if this hopefully works out for you.
That's
so
insane.
my parents sacrificed everything that they had to come here and take major pay cuts, struggle. Like our family went into foreclosure. Like we eventually, like that was during the economy, like when the economy was crashing, like around 2007, 2008. Like it got really bad, and I felt horrible, man. I was like, man, if we stayed in Connecticut, my family would still have like their great paying jobs. They wouldn't have had to deplete through like their savings from being laid off of work and everything like that. It was a tough time, but they're strong. They're amazing people, and that's what I inherited from my family. And it's why I'm 12 years in this wrestling game now, man. And I've learned that the greatest thing in this wrestling thing is just endurance and patience and understanding a lot of who you are through just failing and succeeding and failing and succeeding time and time again, and just learning what works, learning what doesn't work, and kind of getting the gist of things. But moving to Florida, I feel, was probably the best thing for me, man. It was incredible.
So when you got out here, did you already kind of know where you were going to start, or did you come out here and start planning then, or did you have like a school in mind? Because like, what was your process of actually breaking into the business?
So my actual thing was, I remember Dean Malenko still having, some ties to a school. I think it was like in Sarasota around then. Mm-hmm. And I was looking into that around the time. I was still finishing up high school, man. And just, I remember going like, man, I'm not really having any luck, like finding, the wrestling stuff out here, but maybe I'll just start going to these TNA shows, they're at Universal Studios. You don't have to pay to go there. So maybe, let me get in there and learn, see who I can meet and maybe point me into the right direction. And that's what I did. After my senior year of high school, I started working, and I was like, all right, well, I found out that the Team 3D Academy had opened up here in Orlando, and or in Kissimmee to be more exact. And they had just opened up, and I was like, all right, this is the place, and like they were going hot with TNA at the time. And it was like, hey, this is a school that's going 5 days a week. They have a strength and conditioning coach. Plus, they teach you, the fundamentals, and they're teaching you psychology firsthand. It's a year tuition. I think this is the place. Like, this is the place for me. And I remember going to the school one time, and learning what I needed to in order to start. I had to go get a physical. I had to be evaluated by a doctor, make sure that I was healthy enough to even get into the ring to train and everything like that. And once the doctors cleared me, they put me into the ring, and those are the guys that broke me into the business. Man, was the Dudley Boys, Bubba and Devon.
Was there any point? Was there any point while you were there? Like that's already a claim itself to be trained by the Dudley Boys, and them as a tag team, their legacy and what they've done for the business is, everybody knows it. If you don't, then you might have just started watching wrestling in the last couple of years or something. But
Yeah.
Was there any point when you were there where like you might have questioned yourself, double guessed? Like was it like when you hit those ropes and you started training, you're like, oh, this is for me, like because we hear it all the time. There's people that come to training schools and they come there and you see them drop like flies. They're not there for a long period of time. They're gone.
Yeah.
They hit the ropes, take the bumps, like, oh, this isn't for me. Or you see those people where like it is for them, but maybe they go to the wrong school at first, which doesn't seem like that was your case. Like you found your place and that was right. But was there any point where you like double guessed yourself? Was there an injury that happened where you're like, oh man, I don't know if this is for me? Like, did you have a moment?
I was hooked to this, man, since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had moved out here, because I like being a kid, you knew what it was like to discover ECW at like 3 a.m. on some like weird channel, and then coming across like the Dudley Boys or something like that. And like I remember my first ever experience of watching ECW had to do with Raven, and then another time I watched ECW, I watched the Dudleys put a woman through a table. I was like, what the hell am I freaking watching? Like, what is this? What is going on here? And then just following their history after that, and once I became, a little bit smarter to what I was watching and everything, just understanding how these guys put their matches together and how these guys structured everything, how they developed, to generate reaction from an audience, whether it was pushing their heelness to the max or knowing to even how to utilize being babyface when they were with Stacy Keibler or when they had Spike, or just they just knew how to do it. They had it as a tag team. They were one of the greatest tag teams. And like I was watching the WWE Network maybe about a month back.
Yeah.
And I was watching the Raw before WrestleMania 20, which took place in Madison Square Garden. And the Raw before WrestleMania 20 was in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I'm watching this and I was like, holy crap, I'm front row, front and center on the hard cam. And there I am.
Yeah.
They're the Dudleys. And like literally 5 years after, three years after that, they went on to become my trainers, which was really like a surreal moment for me. So to be able to learn from them was nuts. At any point during my training that I ever second guess it, when I realized that your body needed to become a callous to hitting the ropes, and when your body needed to become a callous to taking and enduring multiple bumps, I was like, all right, well, this is a real ring, and it's not a trampoline. It's not anything that people claim that this would ever feel like. No, this is definitely what I wanted to do, and they tested you every single time. And to me, I feel like I got a dose of what it was like to be trained by the last bit of old school type training, with Devon being trained by Johnny Rods and and everything like that. Just Bubba to me is like one of the greatest, like behind the scenes, putting stuff together, developing ideas, doing character development, unraveling things, learning when to understand timing and everything like that. Like they're great components together, and that's why, for me, in my opinion, they'll always be some of the greats.
Ask you a question. It's a little bit detouring when you get back to your story of getting into the business and your first opportunities. But I picked up on something there where you discovered ECW and all this stuff. And the one thing about my page is obviously, like you said earlier, and I really appreciate saying that, you come to the page and it reminds you, like moments that I post or pictures that I post remind you of things that made you fall in love with wrestling. Because the goal of mine was always to bring wrestling fans together, and people that might have fallen out of it remember why they loved it at one point, or people that still love it can either learn about the past or learn about what's going on today. But I'm always so curious about this because we've all gone through it. It's hard to admit. Sometimes we don't like to talk about it all the time, but we've all gone through it. And there's that phase where we were kids, everybody loved it. We got a little bit older. A lot of our friends stopped watching it. We found out the truth about wrestling. How was your reaction to how was your reaction when you found out? Because for me, when I found out the truth, it almost kind of made me appreciate it more because I felt like, oh, I get this now. But like, how was it for you? Like,
my dad early on, once I started understanding more of what I was watching and really getting in tune with it, my dad bought me like the Battle Buddies or whatever they're called. Like I had the Ultimate Warrior and the Hogan one.
I got a Macho King over here.
Prove it, man. Let me see that thing. Where is it? Oh. Holy crap! I haven't seen one of these in years. There he is. Yes. Yeah.
Someone. Let me tell you the story about this. Someone actually mailed this to me as just like a gift because I have a PO box.
Wow.
And they knew I was such a big Macho Man fan. And they're like, "Hey, I found this. I actually don't watch that often anymore, but I can see you're still a really big wrestling fan. I love your clips, but I sent you something." And I'm like, "Oh,
that is amazing, dude."
Like Macho King.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So I started getting a little too carried away with, wrestling these things in my living room or in my bedroom and everything like that. So my dad was, telling me like, "Hey, you gotta start taking it easy a little bit there, man. You're getting a little too carried away with this." And I'm like, well, at one point, like Brian Pillman can't talk about can't talk like that about, Stone Cold Steve Austin or whatever. But I'd smartened up a little bit before that. Not fully smartened up, but started getting tipped off that, like, hey, this is a little set up here. It wasn't until I saw a whiff shot.
Okay.
And I saw somebody sell it to the max, and I was like, did anybody else not see that? What's going on here? And I think it was like the finish too. I was like, whoa, nobody else is going to question this right now. And like so like at that point I was like, I got to look this up. And eventually we have the internet, so I went on the internet and I started discovering like dirt sheets, and dirt sheets are like, oh, whoa, so and so. Wait, they called the match? What does that mean? They called the match. Wait, this is court. This, and it's much like, he was like, this is awesome. I get to control. The control is really in our hands about how special we could create this. Like it's not going in there and just like, and I struggle. It's knowing when to take and give, but doing it for the betterment of the story of you guys are trying to tell.
And that's the key word, because I think for me, I love music. I love movies. I read books growing up. I love a good story. That's just, like that's who I am. Take me on a ride. When I listen to a song, I want to hear the story. That's why I love old school rap a little bit more than new school rap. I appreciate both, but I'm like, man, the rappers back in the day, they were telling me stories. You know what I mean?
They were going through stuff, so they had to convey a message.
Yeah,
now most rappers today, they want to sip syrup.
It's a detriment sometimes, but I'm a big overthinker. Like I want to figure out the meaning of a song. I want to figure out the moral of a story or a movie. Like that's who I am. So when I figured it out about wrestling, I'm like, oh, I appreciate this more, because I'm like, they've been trying to tell me a story this whole time, and they're doing it in this very creative way. And it's really cool. You know what I mean? Like,
and we were following along. It's what kept us tuning in every single week. Like, especially when there was like no real DVR back then, unless you were like recording it off VHSs, you had to tune in to so you wouldn't miss it, because you had to talk about it the next day with your friends and everything.
And similar to you, I used to do the same thing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a wrestler. I'm probably never going to be a wrestler. I broke way too many bones as a kid. Play wrestling on trampolines and fighting with my friends in the backyard and stuff.
We're all wrestlers, man. Life is a match in itself.
But
so
I used to beat up my pillows and stuff. I used to beat up my Power Rangers, stuffed animals and stuff too. And I would and play with my action figures. And what I thought was so crazy was like, I took it so seriously when I was beating up my pillows and setting my matches up with my action figures. And I was technically booking the territory, not even knowing that was a thing that actually happened in real life. I'm like, this guy's going to face this guy. This guy's going to face this guy. They don't like each other because of this. And this guy's going to win because he'll face this guy next. I'm like, I'm already doing what they already do without even knowing that it wasn't real in real life.
Yeah.
And that's what blew my mind. I'm like, oh, and like when I wrestle with my friends and like, we put on shows for like, our older buddies and stuff, like me and this guy are going to wrestle each other. And we'd beat to each other like, yo, okay, now you come back at me now. Okay, now I'm going to come back at you. I'm going to grab you. Like, we're doing this already. And then I'm like, oh, they're doing that too. They're just they're us, but they're professional and they're adults and they're having fun out there.
And you felt a little bit closer to this stuff when you watched it. It made it a little bit more special, because now you knew they had to be artist in a sense. That's why we can agree that Bret was probably one of the best. And it's like the fact that he would just deliver full blows to someone's face and not leave a mark, but it looked devastating to the point where like you'd see him deliver a kick to someone's face. Oh, you'd cringe.
Yeah.
But wonder there's no blood, there's no nothing. That was amazing. I wanted to learn how to do that. So
And Bret was the best at making himself look tired, and he'd be like, and he like, you believed it. Like, he's blown up. In reality, the guy was never blown up.
so quick. So being a huge Bret like fan, and like I've always wanted long hair because of what Bret looked like selling and the whole to me, I was like, oh my God, it resembles a struggle. And like now being in the business and working matches and everything like that, when you're breathing like that and everything, and you send your match to a buddy, like for instance, I'll send a match to like Lindsay Dorado, hey, but could you like critique this or something? You're like, yeah, but you look blown. Like, no, I'm not really blown. I'm just looking like I'm blown. So I adjusted how I sell now, so I don't come across as being just blown up, because guys like Ricochet and everything exist. So you got to up the ante. Man.
Yeah, times have changed. They want you to look like you're in the tip-top cardio shape. Now back to you. Okay, so you're in wrestling school. You're doing the thing. Like, what was the moment where you felt like, okay, the wheels are finally turning? I'm figuring out who I am. In maybe like a match, or you got booked against someone where you're like, this is like that first feeling of satisfaction. Like, this is worth it.
For me, Bubba and Devon are very separate personalities.
Yeah.
So when to me, I wanted to do a lot to get Bubba's respect. Just because you were his student, he would train you and everything, but it was business. I'm here to train you. I'm your trainer, and that's it. But like, to know, like deep down, to know that, like, man, do I have his respect? You would see him interact with certain students who you knew that respect was there. And I was like, man, like, I want that respect. And like, no matter how hard I tried, I was like, man, I don't know if I got it. And I don't know if of course he definitely made you work for it. But I want to say it was like maybe 6 or 7 months into wrestling training. I got bumped up into the advanced class, and I get put into a match with somebody that ended up becoming my tag partner for like ever.
Who was that?
But he goes by Serpentico now. But aka John Cruz. So this is just me still coming up in the advanced class, and there was a tag team that was already in the advanced class. They had already graduated several months beforehand, and it was a tag team with Jesse Neal, who went on to doing some stuff and doing some work with TNA for a little while, and another one of the students named James Hash. And they were a tag team called the Sons of Liberty, Jesse being an actual Navy veteran and being somebody who survived a terrorist bombing and everything like that when he was on the USS Cole. They were coming up with this match and trying, develop tag moves and everything. And my tag partner was already doing a character, being a Mexican immigrant who had just jumped the border. So it was very stereotypical gimmick, man. But it was one of those gimmicks that when people saw him come out, they understood what he was. So I didn't have much of a character. Like, to me, like, I loved guys like Eddie Guerrero. I loved guys like Rey Mysterio. I loved Bret Hart. And I'm still at that phase where, man, I got to develop like the wrestling and make sure I'm really good at this wrestling stuff before I develop anything else. And there was other guys working on really outlandish characters, but their in-ring stuff, for lack of better terms, sucked. Great characters, but they sucked. And I didn't want to be the guy that, had a great character that sucked. So I wanted to make sure that my wrestling stuff was there. So I prided myself on being the great wrestler first and not that much of the character. But I take very well at being, taking direction and everything. So I knew what character, John was playing at the time. And I just played off of that, and just, the chemistry and everything, like just the bumping and feeding for the tag team. We played the heels, and, everything for that match just clicked. And once we were done with the match, we all sat on the apron, and Bubba sat, behind this desk, looking at us with this look. And I was like, oh shoot, I'm in trouble. I did something where I'm in trouble. He's looking at me. He's looking at us. I did something where I goofed up, and I'm freaking out in my mind, and I'm just trying to maintain composure here. And he goes, "Huh? Have you guys ever teamed before?"
Yeah.
No, sir. So this was your first time teaming, huh? Yeah. Huh. You guys have never done this? No. And then he looks over at Devon. They say something to each other. He goes, "Okay. From now on, you guys are a tag team." That was effing phenomenal.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm only 6 or 7 months into training.
Wow.
I can't, yeah. It's like this was like insane for me. So after that, I was very taken back. I was just like, okay, I guess we're gonna be doing stuff now, and I guess we're gonna be doing shows much sooner than I had originally anticipated. And I got to say, it was, I gotta thank John Cruz. For really assisting me and taking me under his wing. I feel way sooner than I should have been, but there was a lot of people that did have faith, and I got to experience that, the independence around that, like that 2009 time frame. And John and I went on to becoming a tag team for almost 9.5, close to 10 years.
And you guys, I'm guessing you guys had a ton of success on the independent scene as a tag team. When was it that you decided? Did you guys ever decide that you guys weren't going to tag no more? Or did you guys just kind of decide, like, okay, we'll try to do singles and tag team stuff? Like, when did that happen between you two? Because I've seen you doing single stuff a lot now.
Yeah. So we sorry about that. I was trying to walk around because I was cut, like the signal was starting to cut out, and I was like, oh, let me try and find a good spot and everything. So cut out for a second. I made my way back to where I originally was. So the advice that we always got, and we felt, especially around that time frame, because right now to this day, I'll say that we're probably one of the best tag teams that a lot of people have never seen. On a larger scale, we had the opportunity of working the Young Bucks at Impact in a dark match that not a lot of people have ever will know or have seen, and just realizing that we were onto something, and a lot of people were we were picking up traction, and Bubba gave us the advice. He goes, you guys need to put wings on your guys' act, and you guys need to get out of Florida, and you guys need to travel more. So we started traveling more toward the Northeast and developing more in like New York, and then eventually becoming more established in the Midwest and working for AAW and working for Dreamwave at the time, and working for companies like MCW over in Maryland. Like, it gave us a lot of traction with more people that had eyes on a product. So we never wanted to be seen as a singles act because we felt we were worth more together. So things, eventually, when things weren't panning out the way we were anticipating, we'd had one last match as a tag team in TNA. This was back in, I think, 2015, and it was a match like on Explosion or something like that. And just, we never heard anything back from them for us as a tag team, but they started bringing me in to come in as my masked persona to team up with Extreme Tiger at the time. So we started, myself and Extreme Tiger became a tag team, oddly, out of nowhere. And that became another experience within itself. Later on, we realized that these masked personas were kind of developing up like way better for us. And now being like, I think what really harmed us as well was it was very difficult for many promoters to get a tag team out. It's hard for a lot of promoters just to fly out one person or two people or three people, but to fly out a pair of guys, it's very difficult. So there was a lot often time where we took on opportunity and things came out of our own pocket, and there became a time where we were being flown out and everything like that, and it just got to a thing where like let's try something different that we haven't tried yet and see what happens. And the second the split happened, I ended up somehow in California for like the first time in my life, and just wrestling out there and wrestling in California. My first time wrestling for California was for Pacific Coast Wrestling, which is an amazing company over there. And because of that company, it opened up a lot of other doors for me, which led me to going to Mexico. And Mexico
let's talk
for the
about this.
last 4
Let's
years,
talk
it
about
took off, man.
let's talk about the mask persona. How did that come
Yeah.
about? Like step by step. Like obviously, like what got you into that lucha wrestling? Because so far we've heard about Bret Hart, we've heard about the Dudley Boys. You
Right.
did slightly say you did like guys like Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio and Dean Malenko, but when did you realize like, okay, the mask seem to be coming back in, it's a thing. Mask character, where did it come from?
So when I was younger, before my parents had like really awesome jobs and everything, we were able to afford better living situations. Like where we lived, it was like it got to a point where one place where we lived was like really like government housing. It was like terrible. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And we had barely like basic cable. Like we had like if you have basic cable, imagine the version of basic cable. Like that's what we had.
Like the 5 channels.
At one point,
yeah.
bare minimum. It was like Nickelodeon, TNT, and like something else. And so I remember when in USA, so when WWF moved Raw to TNN, I had no more Raw to watch, but I was still able to watch Nitro. And I was like, man, I'm gonna tune into Nitro. And it was like around 96, 97. And it was like, man, it was like the height of like the cruiserweight division around that time. So I'm tuning in, I'm seeing this guy, like, Juventud Guerrera. Wow, this guy's cool looking. His mask is awesome. Oh man, Psychosis. This guy is freaking neat. Like he's got the horns and everything. Holy crap, Rey Mysterio just blew my mind. And wow, Eddie Guerrero is probably like the greatest ever. So that I started realizing like, oh man, there's guys that were smaller than Bret that are really more like my size that could actually do this and be taken seriously and do this on a higher platform and, make an honest living out of doing something that people probably said that they would never make an honest living doing. So those guys gave me more hope, and my shift, like my mind, I still enjoyed the Bret Hart matches and everything like that. But my guys that I was glued to immediately were Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. And just to see like the pageantry of the mask and to start seeing like WCW incorporated like Japanese wrestlers and luchadors, which eventually got me to discover more in realizing that it's not just WWF and WCW, that there's stuff around the world that just these guys have taken time to travel the world to develop their craft to bring it to you on this platform. I want to study where they came from. And it just, wow. I remember being a little kid living in Puerto Rico, and my grandma would tell me, if you behave and if you're a good kid, I'll let you watch your wrestling. I remember the only wrestling that we would watch was Carlos Colon's Puerto Rico promotion, or like CMLL, like off the Mexican channels that they would show in Puerto Rico. So as a kid watching CMLL, I was like, oh man, this stuff is cool. I didn't understand like the 2 out of 3 falls concept because I was so accustomed to like the WWF style and everything. But once I learned it a little bit more, I was like, well, this is really cool. So fast forwarding a little bit more, when I started liking, the mass personas and everything, and when Google became a thing, I ended up Googling like, I'm gonna be a wrestler one day. I need to get designs. I need to, start, figuring things out. And so I Googled Lucha Libre and came across a few different art pieces, a few different like mask designs and everything. But I saw this guy's artwork and I was like, wow, this guy is freaking cool. Like I want this guy to like develop like my whole gear design, my merch and everything. Like, and I said this like before even getting into like training and anything like that. And I was like, one day, like this guy. So I reached out to this.
So
in
the back of your head, you had a mask character in the back of your head for like maybe one day. If this all works out, I'm gonna bring this guy out. It's like an alter ego that only you really knew about.
Yeah, for sure. Like I feel like in life you need to be diversified. Like I feel like you need to be diversified with your income. You need to be diversified with what your passions are, because there's so much to life to enjoy just to be nailed to like one thing. Like passions and everything like that. Like to me, like I found diversity, and like I don't want to just be a guy who doesn't wrestle with a mask. I'd like to see what I can bring to the table by being a mask persona. What story can I develop with me being under a mask that will lead to me eventually, having to lose that or an exchange, or defending it. So no matter what, I wanted to live that. And so I knew like I got to see Rey Mysterio get unmasked in WCW. I was like, holy crap, like that that was like heartbreaking and special. But I thought it was really cool when you got to see Rey Mysterio without the mask afterward. Like it made you look at him a little bit different. And I was like, man, this dude's little like me, and like he's part of like this cool group with Billy Kidman, man. Like this guy, I could really relate to this guy, but I don't know if I'll ever be as great as a Rey Mysterio. I can try, but I don't think I'll ever get to that standard. So I remember reaching out to this artist whose artwork I came across, and I was like really excited. I was like, man, this is like the first step, you know, this is how it goes. And I sent this long email. I was like, hit send. And I was like, here he goes, man. And like a week passed, 3 months passed, 2 years passed, a few years passed. And then eventually I'm wrestling and I'm doing this now as a profession. I'm making a little bit of money from this, and I'm working for a company, part of the WWN Live family, Full Impact Pro, FIP. And this was down in Tampa, Florida, or Ybor City, which is like the outskirts of Tampa. And there was a photographer there, a good friend of mine who goes by the name Modern Myth, who we done tons of photo shoots with and everything. And he was always into like very cool, intricate, artsy, abstract level type stuff. And he shows up to FIP to like take the guys' pictures and everything before the show. He goes, "Hey man, I got, you know, a friend of mine who's coming down to check out the show and everything." And I'm like, "Oh, sweet. You know, like looking forward to meeting this dude." So that night, myself and John, we went out, and I think we had a match against the Bravado brothers, I think it was. And awesome match. Like they got to showcase like their, you know, their larger, you know, their big like David versus Goliath story, you know. And we got a bunch of springboards. That's why my knees hurt and my ankles hurt right now. So many springboards and everything during those matches. But the match was awesome. And I remember intermission time happened, and you know, I got a text from Jason. He's like, "Hey man, come out. You know, I just want to introduce you to somebody." And went out. You know, finally made my way through the crowd and saw him, and we spoke for a little bit. He introduces his friend to me, and he's like, "Hey man," you know, his friend, you know, ends up, you know, giving us a very nice compliment, and then lets me know, he's like, "You know, you guys, the way you guys jump and everything, you guys remind me of like these cosmic, weird, like superheroes just fighting through the air." I was like, "Yeah, man, that sounds really awesome. I never really thought of it like that." He's like, "If you guys ever need anything, man, just here, take my card." And while he was talking, I just kind of took his card and just continued the conversation. And before we exited, you know, I looked at the card and I was like, "Wait, Pale Horse? Wait, this is you?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm Chris Parks." And I was like, and I went through my emails, this super weird moment. But I was like, this needs to come full circle right now, man. So I pulled up the emails. I eventually found it. I was like, "Dude, I sent you this email like X amount of years ago." And he's like, "Oh crap." He's like, "Did I ever respond?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He's like, "No, it's totally fine, because it's so much better that it happened this way. It was meant to happen. No matter how you slice it, this moment was supposed to happen."
I love doing these conversations for stuff like that, because that actually does happen. People, sometimes things just come full circle. It's crazy. Yeah.
The story gets even nuttier, man. Like he goes like, "Dude, like, oh my God, I feel so sorry. Like, I feel so bad that I'm usually pretty good at responding to emails. My apologies. Like, anything I can ever do for you." So I was like, "I would love, you know, some gear, you know, some like designs, if you could maybe, you know, help us out with something." And he came up with this incredible, you know, gear design that we ended up sending to our gear lady Jolene, who was like the head seamstress for TNA at the time. And she's just amazing with making you look like you belong on TV. Like, it's just, this gear was like, whenever people saw us wearing this gear, like, "Dude, holy crap, who did that? Who did that? You got to give us their info. You got to give us their info." So we were on to something. So when Chris gave us this design, I was like, "Wow, this is going to get us noticed on a different level now." So we started doing more work. We started working Dragon Gate. We started doing Evolve. We started doing CZW. We started doing other stuff, which, you know, it's like we're traveling a lot more and working for higher profile companies, working higher profile talent. And, you know, I think it all came at the expense of looking the part to an extent. And so I remember when I got the design from Chris, I said, "Hey, what do I owe you for this?" He goes, "Don't worry about payment right now." I was like, "Dude, like, you're an artist, you know, I'm an artist. I know what it's like to be an artist and not work, and to work for nothing, you know." So like, what can I use? Like, "No, like, I'm thinking of something in my mind, you know, and, you know, if just don't worry about it right now, just pay it back later." I go, "Okay." So a few months down the road, he sends me a long email, and the email is, you know, this whole concept as to how he wants to create this Lucha Libre art series for like a an art gallery that he wants to do just based off of luchadors, and he wants to create this character named the Oracle, and he wants to create this whole backstory behind him. So he created this story. He created the gear. I remember at one point I'm in my living room. Yes, I get a text from him. He's like, "Can you send me a picture of your face? Just no context, no nothing. Just can I get a picture of your face?" And I was like,
"Yeah, I guess
so." Okay, and I take this picture and I send it to him. I was like, man, I wonder what I just unwillingly sent to my face is gonna end up on like some t-shirt
dating
somewhere
website
in like
or something. Who knows?
Mexico.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like I don't know how I feel about
he's catfishing people as you.
I want to say like within 2 hours I got back an email with an attachment, and I open it and it's this character fully decked in this cape, this old school cape, gauntlets, like old school luchador, wearing a mask. And then there's another image of the person in the mask, and when you look at the lips and the nose and the eyes, I'm like, holy crap, like that's me. Like, wow, like this is nuts. So we ended up doing this cool like photo shoot, like probably one of the most elaborate photo shoots I've ever been to. Like there was trampolines, harness systems, drones, like it was amazing. And while I'm doing flips on a trampoline so they can catch like shots of this, and just me doing weird posing shots and everything dressed in this character, there's a drone flying over capturing all of this, and they're watching all of the playback on this iPad. So Chris calls me over and we watched the playback, and the lights hitting like the stitching and the fabric of the mask and everything. And he's like, dude, like this looks insane. This he's like, I can't believe like this dude that I drew is actually like in front of me. Like this is nuts. He's like, I've drawn so many things, but never once have they actually come to life. Like you've come to life. So we came out. He's like, how would you like to actually like bring him to life and start using this character at shows? And I was like, hey, if you're on board with it, let's do it. And with his 100% blessing, he was behind the very first ever match that I had as that character, man. Like the merchandise, everything, the publicity that he did, it was like on a big scale. And the backstory of the character was that he was like this larger than life Mexican, superstar who had a protege, and the protege wanted to become this wrestler and everything like that, and just wanted to emulate everything that this character did. And that I inherited the superpowers from like my grandparents, and the powers that convey through the mask anytime I put the mask on and everything like that. And I got to send you one of the postcards that they made for the shows that they made. Yeah, man, it'll be pretty cool. And so with the whole backstory, I was like, man, this is really cool. Except I've never been to Mexico a day in my life during like doing any of that. And fast forward like a few years, like maybe 2 or 3 years later, after doing all this under this character, I got my lucky chance to bring that character to the West Coast and mimic what I did in the story, and actually brought it to life. And like the fact that I had a protege in the story was nuts, because I like being part of Bub and Devon's school. I was able to help and assist, helping training a lot of the students. I became an assistant trainer with John, and we ended up getting to train. Lacey Lane was like one of our very first students who, like, she's now signed to NXT, which is really awesome. So one of the proteges that was part of the story, I also incorporated her. So she was one of the original people wearing the mask and everything. She was part of the story, being Heracula's protege and going on. Like it was art imitating life and life imitating art. It was nuts,
so you actually had a real person that you were training be the protege, so it made sense.
Yeah.
Two questions. First question. How did you guys get the mask character in front of TNA? Whether you're like, yeah, let's roll with this. Let's try this character on television. Because you said that's something that you did a match with the mask character, and they wanted to go with that more. Like, how did that come about?
So around this time, this was right around the time when Lucha Underground was beginning to pop. Like it was the big buzz and everything. And TNA was really high on doing factions. Like they had the Beatdown Crew with Samoa Joe and MVP and a few of those other guys. They had like a faction of ex-WWE guys and another faction, and their whole thing was that they wanted to develop was a luchador faction. So when myself and Cruz, because we had already done a bunch of stuff with TNA years leading up to this moment, and so anytime we would go there, we would always like bring a new presentation of what we've been working on the independents. So whether it was like Bruce Pritchard or somebody else behind the scenes, or Dave Lagana or anybody, whenever we were there, here you go, like this is the new 8x10s. This is what the new look that we've kind of been working on. And when they saw the whole mask persona, it was they fell in love with it. And the fact that they had Extreme Tiger already there with a mask and everything, they felt that one, they could do more with Extreme Tiger as a masked guy whose English wasn't so strong, and bringing us in to assist in the matter, with obviously us both being fluent in English and Spanish, and being able to, all three of us, showcase and then utilize us with the other factions that they had, was the original plan that was supposed to go down. But as everything in TNA occurs, things change.
Well, I think that's in everything in just wrestling generally. Things seem to change when there's plans, from the stories I've heard. So Mexico. Let's talk about Mexico. So you started working the West Coast with this character, obviously California, Mexico, not very far from each other. How was Mexico? How did you head down there? How did they receive the character?
In Mexico, it was insane, because I remember the match that I had that got me all the buzz and everything on the West Coast. It was for PCW, and I remember the main event was RVD versus Pentagon Jr. So like me as like little kid, I remember seeing like RVD at the arena, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, wrestling against Kane and everything. So I was like, holy crap, it's the main event. And I'm like the semi-main event. I'm right before this guy. So I'm like, I got the jitters and everything, but I'm wrestling one of my best friends, which was amazing. So the match was nuts. And I'm not used to being a singles wrestler. I was a tag wrestler. And I know that Mecha Wolf 450 goes, 1,000 miles per hour. Like he is a machine. Yeah. And that's who I was wrestling that night, man. And that night we both brought the best out of each other, to the point where, when the match was done, he got out of the ring, and there was a standing ovation and a "please come back" chant. And like, I remember I was so happy. I was wearing a glass, and I was so excited. I was like covered in sweat, because like it was an emotional moment that like let me know, it's like, all right, you could do this thing as a singles guy. Because I'm not gonna lie, like being a tag team wrestler, it's a lot different. You're in there for half the time, and now being a singles guy, you're responsible for 100% of the thing.
It's all on you.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure I could deliver. So after that night, this was November 12th. And I remember going back to the hotel that night, and some friends of mine that were living in San Diego, Rios Photography, his name is Josh Garcia. He was shooting the show that night. Yeah. And he's one of my best friends, man. I owe him so much. And I'll tell you why. It's like, because that night, he was bringing myself and 450 back to the hotel, and he goes, "So what are you guys gonna do now?" And he's like, "Oh, we got the flight early tomorrow morning, and we got to go back to Florida." And he messes around with me, and he goes, "Hey, man, like, what, you don't have anything planned for the next couple of weeks? Why don't you, just come back home to San Diego, man? Make San Diego your new home." I was like, "Man, I already brought my bag to the hotel room. I'm not going back, man. Although I don't have anything for the next couple of weeks, I'm not going all the way up there." He's like, "All right, see, you're all talk, man." I was like, "Hey, if you go up and grab my bag, I'll go. No questions asked." And called my bluff. He went up and he grabbed my bag, and he brought it back to the trunk, and he brought it back to the car, put it in the trunk. He goes, "All right, what's your excuse now?" And like, I was like, "Damn, he called me out."
Yeah.
And so like my flight was supposed to go out on November 13th. And to me, that's a very symbolic date. It's the anniversary of Eddie Guerrero's passing. So whenever you post stuff on his passing, I love you for it, because it's a good reminder for everybody to realize, how amazing he was. And so I legit, like, it was like a little bit like inner Markish moment, but I asked myself, like, man, like, I really don't have anything set up for the next couple of weeks. I could take some shows out here, or hopefully try to get on some and see what happens next. I'm playing it too safe. Let me live. What would Eddie do? Especially being, the circumstance. So I was like, you know what, John, I'm not going back on the plane with you tomorrow morning. I'm gonna stay in San Diego. And I ended up like the next day, I ended up like waking up and Twitter was like blowing up, and it was like, oh wow, I didn't hardly have this many notifications. And I start going through, and like people are putting over that match that I had, and like, hey, we want to see the Oracle come and wrestle more for this company, and this company, and like promoters started reaching out and like, hey, are you still in California? I'm like, as a matter of fact, I am.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, can you do this show? He's like, as a matter of fact, I can. And it kept happening. So there was this one match in particular that took place, and Conan was there, and I was in the main event of the match, and I was working Best Guy Seis, and he was a Tijuana guy, and we do the match, and afterwards go back, and I'd already been introduced to Conan via email, like a couple of years prior to that. We had already known about one another. I just went up to him to say my goodbyes and everything like that, and he goes, hey, bro, like when are you going back home and everything like that? And I was like, well, right now I don't really have a date set, but it kind of, I'm kind of looking back at, going back this week, because I kind of been away from home for like several weeks now, and I kind of get back to like some responsibilities, like, oh, if you're gonna be in town this weekend, I could help you out with a booking in Mexico. I was like, oh, okay, cool. What booking is that? He's like, well, it's the Crash anniversary show. I was like, whoa, holy crap, that's insane. I'm like, dude, let's do this. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm not going home this Saturday either. I'm staying in Mexico. I'm staying in SoCal a little longer, and I'm gonna wrestle my very first, time in Mexico. And I remember I was like the second match that night, and the main event that night was like Rey Mysterio, Jeff Hardy, and I forget who they were teaming up with against, like Jeff Cobb and Teddy Hart. It was a sick match. And fast forward like a year and a half later, like I got to be the main event in that same arena, and just like there was ticket stubs with my face on it, because I was putting my mask on the line. And
let's talk about it. You had a mask match where if you lost, the mask was taken off. So you found all this unpredictable success with this Oracle character. Things came full circle. You found that artist. You guys found each other again when you finally started wrestling, and you were deep in it. He creates this whole character. You become the Oracle. You're doing the thing. You're out on the West Coast a lot more now. You have a match that everyone's talking about. You did the thing that, once again, from all the conversations I've had with people that are in the wrestling business, one of the things that seems to be very common is just sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time, and just being there, things will happen. If you're just there, like if you put yourself in the situation where something could happen, most of the time something does happen, but you have to put yourself in that situation. You got to step out of your comfort zone, and you extended that ticket, and you stayed in California, and you were just going to go home. But because you did that, look what happened from it. Because that's the way life works sometimes. Like you throw yourself in a situation, you don't know where it's going to go, and then things happen.
Law of attraction, man. I feel like I'm firm on that, because I felt like I had to start attracting that. I was like, oh, if I only stay out here, then it's what I'm going to be around, So like I know it's hopefully not. I felt confident. I sincerely felt confident that this would lead to something, and ultimately it did. I remember after that first match, Conan brought me back and said, I want to keep bringing you back. How do you feel, with doing a storyline? And I'm not sure where the finish will completely lead, but I have faith that I can make you probably one of the biggest, technicals here, in TJ and in Mexico. And he goes, if you trust me, let's do it. And he stuck out his hand and was like, yeah, let's do this. Cool. And much to his word, I know there's a lot of mixed feelings about Conan out there. Some are either really good, some are either really bad, or some are kind of like shades of gray. My interactions with Conan, he was always very direct, and he stuck by his word. He said he was going to, help me become something and give me a chance, and I think he did that and more. And because of that, I've been able to excel in Mexico for like the last 4.5 years of my career, is pretty much where I'm mainly like based out of for work now.
So you go to Mexico, you're killing it out there. You're the Oracle character. Then it happens. There's a match where your mask is put on the line. How did you like? Was it tough for you to like come to terms with the fact like, okay, the mask is coming off, the mystique? Like I talked about the Undertaker earlier. I'm like, the thing that always drew me to him was the mystique of who he was. If we talk about luchadors, like I was a kid at the same time when Rey Mysterio took that mask off, man. It was like, whoa, we're actually seeing him without it. And then when he returned in 2002, I was excited to see him come back with the mask. So many mask situations I can go over here. Kane taking his mask off. My excitement for that. But
that was on Raw. That was so
yeah.
insane. Do you remember watching that?
Yeah, like I was like, and since he made his debut, like you and your friends, I'm sure it was the same. Me and my friends would always be like, we wonder what he looks like under there. We wonder what he looks like under there. You know?
Only to realize it was Isaac Yankem, and we knew what he looked like the whole time.
Like, is that fake? Is that fake Diesel?
It's fake Diesel. Yes, yes. So to start, I remember I knew I always had the concept of being a masked wrestler. I just didn't know when it would happen. And so obviously when I started without the mask. And when the opportunity came for it to become a thing, I just gotten so used to being without the mask that I almost considered the mask a burden. Yet this very same thing that seemed like a burden to me was also opening up several doors of opportunity. So I learned to love this mask, and it got to a point where I was like, man, like this has really now become my thing. To the point where like once you get even a mile away from the arenas in Mexico, the tradition over there is like you need to be masked up because the fans are walking up to the arenas, and it's lo and behold how it is every single time in Mexico. And so being able to go there and practice authentic lucha libre tradition by walking into the arena legitimately masked as a masked wrestler was something huge. And just them accepting you because they knew I wasn't from there, but the mystique of where I was from and what did I have to offer was very transparent. And I knew like it was like walking on eggshells. It was very nerve wracking because like, man, like this is Mexico and this is TJ and like Rey Mysterio Sr., like Psychosis, like there's like Eddie Guerrero have all main evented this famous arena here in Tijuana. And I gotta like really bring it, you know. And just when Conan said, I want to keep bringing you back, I felt like I had done, like my first night there, they were pelting us with pesos and everything. So I was like, what's going on here? Like, I thought we were being assaulted, but like, no, man, like this means you actually had a really good match. Like they reward you with like, with throwing money into the ring. I was like, this is amazing. So eventually building up to that moment when I knew the whole mass situation was going to go down, when I made the decision, I felt like I almost regret it because I feel like I needed to still do a little bit more with the mask, but I've already committed to these plans. And I remember when the moment unfolded, I remember as we were reaching toward, you know, the culmination of the match. You remember like WrestleMania 24 when Ric Flair takes that final super kick and before he gets covered, he's already like sobbing. I don't know if I was necessarily like sobbing here, but inside I was like, what am I doing? Am I ready for this? What's going on? And the 3 count happened. And when I got up, you know, they did the ceremony where you come in, you introduce yourself to the crowd, you do the unmasking. And like, it was nuts because for the first time, like ever, like I really took a moment to watch the people. And like, there's like a little over 5,000 people in this arena and like the history that goes with it. And to know that I'm now part of this history that goes down and that has gone down within the walls of that place. And people have, you know, it was nuts. The whole feeling was insane to see.
What was the reaction?
There was a lot of children crying. The kids were crying. A lot of the ladies were crying. But then there was a lot of people that were excited. Like a lot of guys were like, it was nuts to me. Like I knew this had worked when I'm looking into the crowd and I'm seeing like men with tears streaming down their faces, like giving me a standing ovation. And then of course you've got the trolls in the crowd that were chanting for the other guy. And like, yeah, screw you. But the overall reaction that made me actually cry in the ring was watching people's reactions and them being taken for this ride and for the story, because the person who I lost my mask to was in that very first match that I ever had a year and a half before that, and that's who the story developed with. And we built it up and we built it up and we continued to build up the steam, so people were heavily invested into this match. And it got to the point, like I went undefeated my whole time in Mexico until that moment where I actually lost.
That's a hell of a story. So everyone probably just believed, he's not going to lose. He's not going to lose. He hasn't lost yet.
Yeah, like people were totally, you know, they were gone and they were sold on the, you know, on the fact that I was, you know, I was going to win this match because, you know, the same way that I had won many matches beforehand, we had teased it, you know, we hit the same exact bits in that match and people were like fish, you know, we hooked them. And when the kick out happened, they was like, like the air came out of the room.
Yeah.
It was nuts. So I think the part that truly made me more so emotional was realizing that, like, man, I'm capable of taking people for this ride, and to me it reminded me of being a fan still, and being that same person that went along on those same rides when I watched Bret lose the championship at WrestleMania 20, at WrestleMania 12 in Anaheim,
Yeah.
right? When Eddie got to win the championship against Brock at No Mercy, when can we say the main event of WrestleMania 20?
Yeah. So this is a casual conversation. We can say whatever we want.
Sweet.
Nobody's
Awesome. Yeah, like for me,
nobody's hiring me anytime soon. I don't
awesome.
think.
Awesome. I just know whenever I talk about it on open forum, some people start getting weird. And this is your thing.
Yeah,
so
with the wrestling classic,
we're
about nostalgia. He existed. Obviously, a lot of us don't.
Yeah,
I
man.
don't appreciate the way his life ended. I can't forgive that, but I will never take away how talented he was as a wrestler. It's a fine line to walk, but
same. I'm in accordance with that wholeheartedly. For me, it was just seeing those moments played out and how they all unfolded, and knowing not to a degree, knowing the behind the scenes of what those guys more or less went through, like throughout their careers to reach that pinnacle, to reach that moment where, like, holy crap, like we did stick through this when we probably could have quit, all those years ago. But the fact that we remained resilient, and we remained, patient, and we trust our process above all. We're standing here in that moment at WrestleMania 20 and seeing them, like, both of those guys was something insane for me. So, like, a cool like coming full circle type thing for the whole Pale Horse situation and like those characters was we eventually needed to create a villain and an adversary for the Oracle character. So I obviously had my tag partner in mind. This is something that I felt like we needed to do together. So Serpentico was born off of that idea. And the cool part was that, like, this was maybe 2 years ago in Mexico where we were able to have Serpentico come to be part of the crash, and this was Cinco de Mayo, which was insane.
Yeah.
And we were now going to be able to team up as a masked pair in Mexico, which was furthermore mind-blowing to the entire story that Chris
everything in your career developed. It's just full circle. Full circle. Oh, now you're tag team partners back, and you guys are teaming both under masks.
So we told Chris about, like, the insane situation, so he knew how big this moment was. So he actually came, and he flew down to Mexico, and he was there that night to witness his art pieces come out of the pages and out of his story and actually manifest before his very own eyes. Like, we'd done the Lucha Libre art gallery shows and everything like that, which was pretty cool. But for it to all unfold in Mexico, and like the land where it all really started for, like, Lucha Libre, like it was a surreal moment, and for the three of us to experience that all was insane. Like that was just a surreal moment.
So what is the Oracle character now? Where are we at? Is he an unmasked wrestler, or did you change your persona after the fact? Is that where the Rio came from?
So for me, Rios is my last name. It's my legitimate last name, and I've always had great admiration for my father, as being somebody who is a strong-willed individual, and just being a hard worker, and above all, being an individual who's incredibly resilient. For me, I'm very proud of my history, and I'm proud of my family lineage, and I'm proud of my culture. And for me, I've always wanted to give my dad the honor of being able to see our last name shine in some form, some fashion, and for it to be known by something, and to give people a chance to, eventually learn, a full story about myself and my family and everything along those lines. So I've always wanted to see, I'm very proud of my family. So I've always wanted to see that name shine. I've always wanted to uphold that and be something proud of, something for my family to be proud of. And I still use the term the Oracle in Mexico. They'll always call me that, even though I lost the mask. But in the States, I'm more so still, using the term, the name, the Oracle, Sir Rios Badu. The term Badu in African. Yeah, like that's like the full on, like, super duper long name. And like, to me, the term Badu, it means strength. When you translate it from African to English, it means strength. And when you put Rios and you put Badu together, tells you what I am, and it's like Rios is strong. That's my family. That's who I am. That's who they are. That's what I've embodied. And just being the Oracle, man, like it's insane to have adopted a character that was made to be a fictional one, and then we actually, brought it to life. Whether it was law of attraction, making it all happen, and making, seeing this thing and seeing it through now. But that was something that was nuts to me, and just it really
amazing. Like that whole story is amazing. I like how the way we got to break it down the way we did, because from the Dudley school to doing the tag team wrestling thing, I can go over it all over in summarize, like the meeting the audience, getting the Oracle character, making it such a thing that when you lost the mask, it was a big deal. But then coming out of it and still in Mexico being the Oracle, but reinventing yourself back out here in the U.S., bringing in your real name, bringing you're always growing and always adapting, therefore never perishing, and keeping this ball rolling, and I think that's actually that's super, super, super cool, man. Like,
it's nuts, man. And the rest that has followed is just furthermore mind blowing. Like, I get to hold the title now at the very same company that I lost my mask in. I represent the company on a much bigger.
You're the champ now.
I'm the cruiserweight champion in the Crash. So John Gresham was the title holder before that, and Bandito was the title holder before that, and Phoenix and Ray Horse. Like the lineage of guys that held this title is nuts. So for me to now have this same title, there's a lot of big shoes to fill, but I plan on creating my own footsteps and just making those footsteps a little bit bigger.
I'm glad we did this, because I feel like I got to learn so much more about you, and I'm really excited to check some of this stuff out if it's available to check out. Can you check out these matches? Are these matches available on YouTube or anywhere?
Yeah, man, there's so like it's I'm my own worst critic. I think the people that are really passionate about what they do kind of tend to be, and it's a double-edged sword, because you can never be too good, or it can't ever be too bad. And to you, it might be like, but to other people, it's like, oh my God, it's amazing. And I'm sure like wrestling classic.
I'm not a wrestler. I'm not a wrestler, but it's relatable, because I sit here and I'll joke around and call these casual conversations, because I feel like I'm not that great at them. And then everyone always be like, no, dude, man, you're good at them, and what you did was good. That was a good conversation. I'm my biggest critic. Great. This could be a great conversation, but at the end of it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to listen to it again. I probably wasn't that professional.
You'll sit there and you'll try to pick it apart, and that's 1,000% what I do. So I try not to watch a lot of my matches. And that's probably bad. I try to watch a lot of other people, like a lot of my students and everything, and they'll send me their matches, and I'll pick it apart, and I'll kind of go like, why are they doing this? And I'm like, well, dummy, you kind of do that too. So, all right, slap on the hand for me. You can't do that in your matches anymore. So I try to correct it by watching other people's stuff and just being honest with myself and understanding, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Could you do something better? Is your selling or is your selling So I'm always looking to evolve. And like the cool thing with me is although I've been doing like the lucha libre stuff in Mexico, I don't bring that atypical luchador style. Like I can do all that stuff and everything else. But to me in Mexico, a lot of those guys are in a race to be number one with what they can do in the ring skill. And I'm just at the point in my career where I'm learning that the guys that have made the biggest splashes are the guys that are most memorable. Like you've probably watched 1,000 amazing matches, but the ones you remember the most are probably the guys with the biggest presence, the guys with the greatest characters. Or if they were like matches, like to me, like Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit was a match that they sold for WrestleMania 17. Like it was the first match that was legitimately, I think, sold as to who was the better wrestler in the wrestling in a wrestling company in the WWE, and that was the storyline. They did it, and there's not many people that can do that right now. So I want to bring more of a character vibe to Mexico and introduce that.
You've done really well, and going back to the match thing, and that's true, because don't get me wrong, one of my favorite match of all time is Bret and Austin from WrestleMania 13, but that is more because the story of it and the story of the characters going through it, and they gave a great match. But I also appreciate a match like British Bulldog and Owen Hart on Raw in Germany for the European Championship. And that was a wrestling match, and it was a really good wrestling match. I remember it because of that. But then I also, at the end of the day, really enjoy a match, and it's one of my top 5 favorite matches of all time too, like Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior, WrestleMania 7. And that was awesome. That was nothing but character. That was literally nothing but larger than life characters acting in their character role. So like you were saying earlier, wrestling, similar to just in life, you do need a diversity of everything. You need to be diverse. You need to be able to do the character thing. You need to be able to do the really good wrestling thing. You need to be able to bring it together when you need to bring it together for a story. And what I found out listening to you and listening to your stories, like through your experiences thus far, yeah, when you were in the school with the Dudleys at first, for you, what was really important was getting that groundwork done, getting that groundwork done of becoming a really good wrestler. And then with your journey with the and as a tag team through that journey, what happened was you learned to be a wrestler, but also learned how to be a tag team wrestler and how to more of the grit work of independent wrestling is what you learned, how to go out to get booked on shows and be out there. And then with the Oracle, that's when you finally got to learn the character aspect, and then you really got to put that together. And then now I think we're in a very great position where now you know you have the knowledge and the appreciation and the understanding of what it is to be a great character. You've already done this whole wrestling thing. You've put the groundwork down, and out of circumstances of being able to go to Mexico and stuff, now you're diverse as a wrestler. You got the groundwork, Dudley school groundwork wrestling down, but you also have this lucha wrestling down, and you can kind of hybrid it. I think from a fan's perspective, a wrestling fan's perspective, where you're at right now is like you finally have the formula. It's all been put in the pot, and you can stir it together, and you're going to do something really great going forward. If I can say that.
No, so I appreciate you saying that, because like I don't like to be the guy that goes toot toot. I hate that.
No, I didn't want you to toot your own horn, so I'm tooting your horn.
But, no. So, but like and not even the fact that you're doing that. I think it's okay to be proud of my accomplishments and the things that I've done. But like when you pointed out in a timeline like that, I like when this year was coming, I'm sure everybody had like the whole stereotypical like 2020, clear vision, like woohoo. So I was so excited for this year because like there was a lot more stuff that was going to unfold in Mexico, a lot more stuff to unfold with CMLL, a lot more stuff to unfold elsewhere and other places, and more things to do. And of course, just like much like most people in my position, it just all came to a halt. But it was one of those, this was the year where I told myself, it was like, man, like this, I know that this is going to be the year where something like legitimately fantastic happens for my career, because for the first time ever, I've never felt more complete than I have now. And as a wrestler, as everything, like I watched my stuff now back from like a few years, like 4, 5, 6 years ago. I'm like, oh man, that stuff was really fun, but I wouldn't do that stuff now. Like, and a lot of that stuff, like although like, because we got taught wrestling psychology firsthand from tag team wrestlers. So all of our stuff for the most part always tend to make sense from and like John, he's a psychology like stickler. Like the matches, like when we call stuff, like we'll walk away and we'll talk about it a little bit. He's like, wait, that person is be selling down for too long. Well, this is going on, and this is going to be this, and this is going to be that. So no, we got to do this. So this person has a reason. Everything has to mean something. That's why like Benoit and Eddie to me were like the best. And like when you were talking about that mixing and everything like that, like I feel like that's why to me Eddie Guerrero is probably one of the best, because Eddie knew when to be that serious, straight, grungy heel who knew how to like push the boundaries and make you like go, oh man, like I feel really uncomfortable, and he made you like laugh.
And you can look at his character too, because I remember when I first saw Eddie, he looked like a Mexican uncle with the stash and the singlet, and he didn't really have a character or a presence. That was my first impression of Eddie, but he was a really, really, really good wrestler.
Amazing.
And it was over time where it's the same thing. He got the character thing kind of going. He got in the car accident, came back all ripped, and like he looked different. And then, you know, when he came to like it's over time, then he got the character thing down. And then he had this charisma where whether he was a bad guy or a good guy or wherever he was in his career, he found a way to stay entertaining because he understood both aspects. We already knew he was a really good wrestler. Now we also are entertained by him, just as dude could come out there and say like 5 words and we'd be like, Eddie, you know what I mean? Like
100%. So like to me, like so like right now, and I love that you did the whole blending part, because like where I'm at now, I feel like I've taken like all these little different seasonings. Like I took a little bit of Razor Ramon, I took a little bit of like the Lychee Steel Eddie and the I'm Your Poppy Eddie, and a little bit of Shawn Michaels and a little bit of Shawn, and I mixed it in. I dabbed a little bit of Roddy Piper and sprinkled it with a little Brian Pillman, and I just blended it some more. And like I feel like that's where the hell I'm at right now. It's just I'm waiting to like unveil this person.
and I totally feel that. You totally feel that. And that's the thing, like someone else I did an interview with was like, the one thing about wrestling, being a wrestler, and I don't know this, I'm not a wrestler, but the one thing about being a wrestler is you actually never do stop learning. and you never do stop
No.
growing. But I feel
It's
like
the
you've
most
hit a
fascinating
point
thing ever.
where like you've learned a lot to this point where like you're gonna bring something new out there that people aren't ready for yet. Maybe. This was great, man. Honestly, I want to keep talking, but I don't want to keep it going for too long.
No, you're good, brother.
Where can I know you don't like watching your matches, but where can people watch your matches if they listen to this? And like, where can I watch that? You know, the mask on the. Where can I watch your article? Where can I see this guy?
I'm in the process where I'm going to have, because I'm not very computer super savvy. I got to get better with that for sure. But I'm in the process of having people being able to send me the matches that they have recorded. Like everything in Mexico is really weird because we always have floor cams and everything, but like the footage never comes out officially. It always comes out from like some other unofficial person that was like had a really good spot in the arena, and it just so it's like I guess I'm gonna have to do that. But like kind of what I want to do is like maybe invite wrestlers that I'm good friends with to and just do commentary over those matches, or maybe have other people do commentary over those matches. So it's not just movement, but I do have a YouTube page that I need to do a lot of work on. It is, you can find it at Rios is the way. But if you were to YouTube, Oraculo or Sir Rios Badu, a lot of the stuff that I've done, my most recent stuff will come out. A lot of my singles matches with Serpentico, masked, unmasked. A lot of things that I've done in different companies have come out. A lot of stuff in Mexico has come out. Then yeah, but I gotta get better with it. I gotta get on your level.
Well, like, I'm here to help, man. If you have any questions or you need help on stuff up.
You've set like this bar for like what it's like to be extremely proficient and professional and reliable and credible with all of your social media handlings, like how you present it, how you present it all, everything like that. And I know we're ending this off shortly. Like again, I just kind of want to like loop back around and say a sincere thank you, man, for being able to just be able to be a platform for people to relive some of the greatest moments in wrestling history, moments that made you a fan, moments that made me a fan, and moments that people tend to forget about, because there's just so many great moments that have happened, but you do a damn good job at making sure that we get to see a lot of that. And the whole being connected to the whole Maestros Classic group is just another bigger thing to me.
To Maestros Classic, the best beard grooming products on the out there, I think, to be honest. I've been using it for a couple of years now. You can find them in Target. You can order this stuff on maestrosclassic.com. They're the main barbers and beard care specialists, the maestros for the WWE, for NASCAR, for the 76ers. Like, they're great people, man, and they've helped me out a ton. They connected us, right? They connected us, and like we've been cool with each other. We've talked. You've been super supportive, and I'm like, I want to do something with you. And we said this. I said, I'm like, I want to talk to you someday. On the podcast. I don't know when or where. We'll figure it out. Quarantine made this happen. Shout out to COVID. But
thanks, COVID.
And I think after, like, and this is the thing. Like, I knew about you, and I know you were a wrestler, but I never knew your story. And that's the same thing. I think one of the things I've been very, and this is going to lead to one last question. One of the things I've been very blessed with this page was, obviously there's a ton of people following me, and with a lot of those people are people that are wrestling fans and have been wrestling fans since the kids. They're like you and I. They love this business and they want to pursue it. And I've been fortunate enough to see the people that were following me since like 2015 now in the wrestling business, just killing it. Like, that's awesome. I don't want to drop names, but like there's people out there that are on television weekly now that were just humble followers of the Wrestling Classic, and we were buddies, and they're like, hey, your page, maybe you want to pursue this, because it's the same thing. Like, I come there, I see why I love this stuff, and I'm like, I want to be a wrestler. And I've seen them go and succeed. I've seen people, and I mean, like, globally in England, here, like, people just follow the page I want to see. So I know that there are other people that follow my page that might want to pursue professional wrestling and
you've got some amazing reach, man.
Yeah, and want to actually like do what you're doing and what so many other great people are doing, chasing the dream and doing it. But I also know it's not easy. And sometimes what happens is, and it happens to me, people do it to me, and I'm like, I'm just a regular person. But it happens to people that are wrestlers, where like a lot of people only see the success. They only see, look what they're doing, look where they're at, but they don't see that behind the scenes struggle that they went through, or like the hardship that might have went through it. So knowing that, and knowing that there might be someone listening to this who might either might be training to be a wrestler right now, might consider training to be a wrestler. You are a trainer. You still teach at the Dudley School. What advice would you give people that might want to pursue this? Like, what kind of heads up? What advice would, if you could talk to your younger self, going back, what would you say to yourself, knowing what you know now about this, about pursuing professional wrestling?
Oh, dear younger Jay, run! No. I would say, make sure. I learned this whole diversity thing as the years developed in my career, and it was just, you know, much like while you're trying to level up in anything in life, you know, there's going to be times where you slip, you fall, crap, you got to pick yourself up again. My main thing is, if you are a resilient person, and if this is something that you're truly passionate about, then I'm nobody to stop your dream, and you should let nobody stop your dream from pursuing this. Just be okay with knowing that your body will never be the same ever again, from the first bump until you decide when your last one is going to be. So just make sure all those things are going to be worth it for you in the long-term process. My whole thing was, I never looked at this. I always knew, like, much just growing up, like, I'm going to be a WWE superstar one day. I'm going to be a WWE. I'm going to be a pro wrestler one day. I'm going to be a pro wrestler one day. I can remember my senior year of high school when I had kids around me just going like, oh, I got accepted into here, or I'm going to go into this college. Oh, Rios, yeah, where are you going? I'm like, I'm not wasting my time with college right now, man. Like, I got to attack this wrestling thing while I'm young. You know, I figured if I start now or within the next year, I gave it like this really outlandish timeline. And I'll probably be like, again, it's not understanding the realistic standpoint of it. I had an idealistic standpoint, but the realistic point of this all is that we all will make our way into this differently. We all come from different backgrounds, and we'll all succeed differently. So you can't match your success to someone else's is the main thing I've learned. You can't live your life comparing to yourself as another individual, because it'll drive you crazy. Because I'm somebody that I allowed myself to be fully consumed by wrestling. Like, eat, breathe, sleep, and still to this day I do. But I put my eggs in other baskets, and that's my biggest piece of advice is, if you love something, go all in, but have a reservation in the back for just in case if you run out of fuel here. Make sure you got enough fuel in the tank to get you where you need to be, so where you could at least set up shop and get to where you need to go from that point. And I put all my eggs in the wrestling basket so many times in the beginning, where I was like, man, all these things keep happening, opportunities keep being promised. We keep having these moments with Impact. We've worked with Ring of Honor. We're working with Evolve. We're doing all this cool stuff. But I still feel like there's something more we could do. Oh, so-and-so saying something else could happen, but it's not really happening yet. So be patient. Above all, is make sure you want to do this and understand that it takes a ton of patience. Some people might make it in a year right out of training. And that's just the reality of it. And again, it goes back to much what we were talking about earlier, is being at the right place at the right time. But that just very seldomly happens for so many people. Like right now, the Young Bucks are probably the talk of the town. But those guys have been grinding for a long, long time. And eventually it took those guys to be in the right place at the right time. And now, you know,
hard work
to those guys.
Hard work, time, patience, and luck plays a part. Small part, but it plays a part.
Luck plays a small part, and it only plays a part if you're willing to remain resilient.
Yeah, if you're doing that hard work and you're putting yourself out there. There's a lot of hits, I think. I've been hit a lot where it's like, oh, most people would probably give up here, but I'm just going to keep going and see what happens.
Yeah. Like I said, like to me, I was very, the main reason why I kept up on this whole wrestling thing was, when I was a little kid, I got to be raised a lot with my grandma in Puerto Rico, and my grandma, she was like my freaking idol, man. And when I was this was maybe 4 or 5 months into my wrestling training, I ended up having to fly out to Puerto Rico and be with my grandma as she laid in her deathbed. And it sounds like a sad story, but like when people hear it, they're like, "Oh man, that sucks." But when I say it, it's like it was like the moment that woke me up in life, like when holding my grandma's hand as she took her final breath.
It empowered you.
and burying my grandma, and like just understanding like, holy crap, like this is wild. My grandma always believed in the word like lucha, because like she's mainly spoke Spanish, but for us in Spanish, like the word lucha is to fight, to survive. And like she always said, like if like, and I'll say it in Spanish, I'll translate it for you in English. Si no estás luchando en la vida, no estás viviendo. If you're not fighting for the things you love in life, then you're not living. And I always felt that you needed to do the most for what you love. But at some point that becomes a fine line at the same time. But my biggest bit of advice to anybody looking to get into this thing is make sure you actually want this. Make sure you're okay with your body never feeling the same. Make sure that you're okay with a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of tired moments, a lot of moments of confusion. But just understand that if you have a vision that's greater than what you could even possibly fathom, if you could just even dare to dream higher than what your initial dream was, that you'll probably fall short, but at least you'll fall short of being somewhere close to where your expectations are. So aim the bar high, no matter no matter who laughs at you, no matter what's being said. It's nuts because like I just got invited into like this Facebook group from like people that I went to high school with in Connecticut and like middle school with. And like a lot of them are all going through like my Facebook pictures, like, oh my God, dude, you're actually doing this. It's all you ever talked about when you were like, you know, in school. I was like, yeah, that's all I ever wanted to do. And I did it. And I had to see this through. Like my parents sacrificed a lot for this. My grandma sacrificed a lot. So like my mom could do what she does. So my mom could help me do what I do. So I feel like this is a trickle down effect. Like I couldn't give up just because things got hard or training got tough, or I was too bruised or I was too battered. Like I was okay with knowing that a lot of people gave a lot for me to have this moment of opportunity, and I couldn't let them see that go to waste. So just love what you do and do what you love, and make sure that what you're doing is something that you're passionate about. And by all means, please, if you're going to go to a wrestling school, go to a school that is very, very reputable. Don't go to Joe Schmo's shack in the corner, you know, behind the dark alleys, you know, in the middle of nowhere, that are promising you a pipe dream. Anybody that's probably like promising you a pipe dream, just ask them what their pipe dream was, and ask them if they've ever reached it. So go to a reputable school. Go to people that have done something in this business, not necessarily, you know, have gone on to headline WrestleMania or anything, or have, you know, crazy TLC matches. Or my trainers are awesome when I think. But just make sure you're going to somewhere reputable, because those guys aren't going to play. Those guys aren't going to be there to want to take your money because they've got plenty of money. They're not there to take your money. They're there to legitimately see this thing through and to see what they love continue to live on by their tutelage. So that's what I mean by go to a great school. Booker T has a great school. Gangrel has a great school. Lance Storm has a great school. Dudleys have a great school. Los Luchas have a great school out on the West Coast. Santino Bros. I know there's a few schools out there that I'm probably leaving out off the top of my head, but there's a lot of good reputable schools out there for if you're truly serious about this. No matter the price that they're asking for tuition, if you're serious about this dream, then you get what you pay for at the end of the day. That's how I put it.
Sweet, man. I really appreciate all that. I appreciate you doing this with me. This is a great time. Before we head out, one last thing. Where can they find you on social media? Is it
social media? I've tried to make it as crisp as possible and make it a one-stop shop, much kind of similar to you.
Thank you.
Where Rios is the way. Like if you want to know more about Justin, follow Wrestling Classic. The Wrestling Classic will lead you to Justin. Justin will lead you to Wrestling Classic.
Yeah.
If you're lost, if you're confused, and if you need guidance, then my friend, look no further, because Rios is the way. Just that's all you need to know. Rios
I hate this
is the way. It's somewhere right there.
Down there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I see it.
I appreciate you joining me. I actually really, really enjoyed this conversation. I like these ones a little bit more because I'm like, we haven't had this face-to-face conversation. So to have it for the first time like this was cool. A casual conversation with the classic.
Man. Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on, man. This is a good time. And I'll see you guys all next week. We'll see who I have as a guest. Make sure you guys keep tuning into the TWC show. Man. The TWC show is on Dash Radio, Spotify, iTunes, all that fun stuff. Also, these shows are all on YouTube, man. These casual conversations on YouTube in video form and in audio form. As bonus shows on the TWC show. If you already follow the TWC show on those Apple Podcasts and Spotify and stuff, you'll find these bonus shows too. Make sure you follow Rios is the way. Follow him, support him. Big things are coming. got a little pause with the coronavirus situation going on right now.
It's all good.
But when things
We're
are
gonna
bad,
pick right back up.
some crazy stuff is coming. I appreciate you doing this. We'll see you all next time. Ooh, yeah, dig it.
Later, brother.
It's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.